Welcome to another episode of A Come Together. We are live for what's going to be one of the hardest episodes that I've ever had to record. It was my third take trying to get through it, and it's really, really, really hard. But I think I'm getting my thoughts organized and in order enough to be able to make this coherent. Excuse me. This topic is so hard for me to cover because I am Jewish first, not American first or Israeli first. I'm Jewish first. I live and breathe and will die by the Jewish values and the Torah values, and the ones that are that are completely committed to life and completely committed to the development and evolution of consciousness and the the weight of the responsibility of trying to fix the world around us in a healthy, positive, and uplifting way. We'll live and die by these values. And I do live and die by these values, and I raise my family with these values. And so it's really, really difficult to talk about particular topics and current events and news um, because it requires a lot of nuance. And I hope God gives me the strength and the words to be nuanced. Hashem should help me. There's a there's an idea in Jewish literature, a Jewish concept called exile, galus. Not a secret, not well known. There's various Jewish exiles that happen to the Jewish people, and there's like there's four ones that are of quote unquote biblical proportions. Because you could obviously call it the Spanish Inquisition, obviously in exile. You could call it Holocaust in exile, of course. But as far as the biblical ones, there is Egypt, which was Mitzrayim. It's a very famous "Let My People Go" story, um, and great DreamWorks movie, I think, based on that. Um, then there was Babylon and Greece, and then what was called Edom, and we don't really know who Edom, who the nation is today, which is really, really interesting because I think that's intentional. And one of the reasons why that's intentional is because there's a concept that whenever we were exiled, it wasn't just because a bunch of people came and chose to beat up on us, even though that does happen. But the primal and fundamental and biblical exiles are ones that are actually self-inflicted, that we actually look inside towards ourselves and say, what did we screw up with? How did we sabotage one another? What did we do to break the word of God? What did we do to break the Torah and to pretend to be holy and to pretend to be great and to pretend to be something that we're not? And people, I mean, and you have stories of during the first temple that there were only just, I think, like 30 something high priests or Kohen Gadol, which are the representatives of the entire people. It's like the holiest spiritual position that's held in for the Jewish people. And in the second temple, there was hundreds. And one of the reasons why was because it was a sign of corruption and that the people were trying to buy their way into spiritual greatness, and they're trying to buy their way into positions of spiritual authority. And it doesn't work. And it doesn't work. And we don't know who Edom is, but we know that there's a prototype for him, which was Esav, or Yaakov or Jacob's twin brother. And there's a difference in philosophy. That was really what the primal thing was, the primal conflict. There was a difference in philosophy, and maybe that's why we don't know who Edom is as a country, because I think we're fighting a philosophy. I think there's a philosophy. And everyone keeps on talking about spiritual wars, and obviously there's a spiritual war. Obviously, there are wonderful people with the best intentions, and most people that you and I will come across with are good people. And then there are people that aren't. And there are people that aren't, and there are a lot of people that aren't that pretend to be good. Um, that's one thing, right? And so I want to say that right off the bat, when I talk about the conflict that's happening right now in the world and my criticism of the state of Israel, if I'm going to criticize them, and I am, a little bit. I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about the land. I'm not talking about the businesses. I'm not even talking about the IDF. There is so much flack that goes to the IDF these days. There's so much flack against talking, that goes with talking about the people in Israel and how beautiful the country is and how incredible how incredible it is. It's just, I mean, I love the place. I lived there for a year and a half. I've been there. I've traveled there probably a dozen times, half a dozen times in my life. Um, I don't know exactly even how many. I've been traveling since I was a kid, and actually, I grew up my whole life basically associating the state of Israel with Orthodox Judaism, and only, and there was a really really wonderful program, and there really is a really wonderful philosophy that actually does embrace it, and they do really wonderful things. They bring biblical concepts to life in modern day Israel, and they have incredible biblical sites and tours and ruins, and I mean, like the history literally comes to life. And when you're traveling, and you go to Israel, and you've been reading about these places, these cities that you've been hearing about your entire life, and you've been learning about your entire life, and you're praying about, and you're able to just like hop on a bus and go through them, and you get off the bus, and there's just a sense of community, and as far as the IDF goes, and they get so much fucking flack, and it's crazy because because you know what, so many of them are just amazing kids that are just like 17, 18, 19, 20 year olds that make people feel comfortable in the street, that give a sense of, like, family and give a sense of care, and, like, you don't walk around, and you don't walk around. Man, in America, we've been kind of, and I think obviously a lot of this is social manufacturing, and there's no question about it that social media does a lot of this, and that the fact that we're so addicted to our phones, we're so addicted to social media, and the fact that we're more isolated than ever, and that everything is able to be online, and universities are online, and jobs are online, and relationships are falling apart around the world, and then Americans don't trust one another. I mean, like, it's a total opposite world in Israel. It's a total opposite world in Israel. You go there and you feel safe in the street, and you go there and you feel safe dealing with people, and yeah, I know there's gonna be pushback. I know, whatever. For the majority of the time, whether you're Jewish or not, whether you're Jewish or not, there's always people going there. There's always tourists there. There's always, I mean, and I mean, I never felt uncomfortable or scared really going through the Arab Shuk. And I mean, I used to when I was younger, um, and then my grandfather explained that, hey, these guys are just businessmen that are just trying to feed their families, and they're not really interested in fighting. And like, if there is fighting, they lose business. They're not interested in that either. Like, regular people are not interested in fighting. And I didn't even realize the weight of those words. I don't think he realized the weight of those words. The notion, the idea that regular people don't want to fight. Regular people just want to live and just want to have their families and just want to be happy and just want a place to be able to raise their kids and spend time together. That's what regular people want. And so I'm not criticizing Israel as a country. I'm not criticizing the army, even. I'm not criticizing the businesses. I'm not criticizing anything about the place. I'm criticizing the leaders. The I'm criticizing Bibi. I'm criticizing, man, I mean, the truth is I was never even involved in politics. I never even knew what these politics were until it started having an impact on everything. Okay, wait. I wanna make sure that I wanna reel it in and make sure I'm gonna get not emotional about this. So the state of Israel was created in a real rush, and it was, immediately post-Holocaust, and a lot of young people, a lot of young extreme people. which, is obviously something you probably need to start a state, came together, and they had a lot of questions and conflict within themselves as to what they really expected, what they envisioned the country to be. Was this going to be a religious place? Was this going to be a secular place? Was this going to be exclusively Jewish? Was this not going to be exclusively Jewish? If not, what percentage? What about army? What about governance? What about airports? Like, how much of a quote unquote country are we? We knew that there was a absolute need post Holocaust for a home for the Jews, but we didn't know what that home was necessarily going to look like. And it was as if everyone kind of just put their stuff down, was like, well, I'll figure it out later. Let's just get it and then we'll figure it out. And I think that we're still paying we're still paying the consequence of creating a country without an identity till today, because the country does not have an identity. The country is kind of schizophrenic, actually. There's conflict between, and I'm sorry, and I'm saying this is largely generalized philosophical conflict. It might boil over with a couple of individuals, but generally speaking, it's primarily philosophical and not a conflict. I say that there's infighting and just hate in that kind of sense, although obviously there are extreme cases. Um, but between the Orthodox community and the secular community, and um, between the people that are expansionist with their ideology and people that are passive and, a little bit more pacifistic about things. And we didn't really ever answer that question. And I think that right now, I think that this conflict, or a lot of the conflicts that have been going on, are a consequence of us not necessarily knowing who we are and what we're expecting ourselves to be. The country's becoming religious very quickly, and that actually might be a good thing. It might be a good thing. And I'm not talking, and I also want to say that real quickly, that when I say religious, I'm not talking about the religious representation within government of Israel, because I don't know anything about them, but that's not, but most of the religious people I know, Orthodox people that I know, or most of the people that embrace an Orthodox ideology, wouldn't even bother getting involved in politics to begin with. So the type of people that already are, in the upper echelons of Israeli politics, which is almost like being on the upper echelons of American politics, the amount of involvement that they have with one another, most Orthodox people wouldn't want any part in that. And I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm sure there are some people that would, but generally speaking, people don't want that. So I'm not talking about those leaders, but in general, Orthodox families tend to have more kids, tend to procreate much faster, and the secular community tends to have one or two kids, or if that. And so at a certain point, and in a small country like Israel, which is the size of New Jersey, I don't even know how many people are in it. That's that crazy. Couple million people, maybe 10 million people. Um, I'm actually gonna look that up and cut this out. No need to cut that out. I was right. It was 10 million people. Okay. Um, but yeah, so I mean, out of those 10 million people, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, a huge percentage of them were not religious, and then now that number's switching. I remember, I think it was a Coleman Hughes interview. He was talking about the numbers that were switched, the percentages of religious to not religious, and that it was flipping pretty quickly. Um, but this is actually where I want to segue into also a really, really important conversation about Jewish representation and Jewish voices. And that is that, man, here we go. I've done a couple of podcasts with a couple of Israelis, and secular primarily, a couple of religious ones, but primarily secular. And I've been on the phone with them, and I try to do a pre-call conversation with everyone I do a podcast with, just to kind of get a feel for the person before we record for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is. And the Israelis have always said to me, whenever we're talking on the phone, I would say, "How's it going over there?" I speak Hebrew, so when I hear that they're Israeli, I switch to Hebrew, talk a little bit with them, and I'll say, "What do you think?" And they'll say, "Let me tell you something. Bibi's a nightmare, and he's hurting himself, and he's hurting Jews, and he's hurting Israel." And then they'll immediately cover back up and go, "But I would never say that out loud on the podcast, and I'm never going to say that in a recording, and you're never going to hear me say that, in a public space." And I really do hear. I grew up in a home. My grandparents, my mom's parents are both Holocaust survivors, and my mom, and for my mom, growing up with two Holocaust survivors, there's no picnic. Definitely not. Not saying she had a bad life at all. She loves her life and has always loved her life. But I'm sure that it's not easy. You're growing up with people that have been through some of the most traumatic experiences in human history. And that does something for sure. And one of the things that it does is create a very, very, very strong primal sense of tribalism, for better and for worse in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it's really, really good. In a lot of ways, um, it can be really detrimental in times like now. In times like now, where Epstein emails are leaked and millions of people around the world are hearing Epstein talk about the quote unquote Goyim, and people assume now that because Epstein, who's a Jew, said and uses a Jewish or Yiddish word or Hebrew word, that that is what every Jew in the world thinks. Let me tell you something. We don't think like Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein does not have a very good grasp of orthodox Jewish values, traditional Jewish values, Torah Jewish values, and and the way that he chooses to understand whatever the hell he was doing and whatever fucking way that he was doing it, the way that he was using Goyim is not the way that the Goyim is used. and And the problem is that there's no one here talking about it, and there's no one here saying it. And you know what? There hasn't been any kind of intelligent form of real. I haven't really heard any great Jewish representation in a very, very long time. Ben Shapiro has not done it. Rabbi fucking Shmuley is not doing it. Believe me. Barry Weiss is not doing it. Believe me. Bibi Netanyahu is certainly not doing it. This is going to take generations for the world to change the way that they look at the state of Israel now because of Bibi's behavior. Fact, period. I'm very sorry to say that, and I hope that I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. And if you have your finger on the pulse of the world at all, it is a really, really, really unpopular time to be an advocate of the state of Israel, to be an advocate of Israel, Israelis, the state of Israel, and Jews around the world. It doesn't look good right now. Uh, um, and I hate to say, and I hate that that's the case, but I also, if no one talks about it, then we're fucked, dude. And if the people that are talking about it are the only ones talking about it, we're in trouble. Let me tell you something. Jonathan Sacks, Rabbi, Chief Lord, the British Jonathan Sacks, the teacher, I believe at NYU or Columbia, one of the two, or maybe both. The one that wrote the book, The Great Partnership, about science and religion going hand in hand. The one that wrote the book called Not in God's Name, where he says, hey, stop pretending. And it's so crazy. He was writing the book to talking about examples of extremism in all religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And he's saying not in God's name. I remember I was in college. I can't believe that this is even a story that I have to say right now. I was in college. I was in Binghamton, and I have a good friend of mine who's so smart. I'm not going to say his name in case he doesn't want to be talked about. Such a good, smart dude. Um, and I see that Jonathan Sacks published this book. I think I was a junior or senior in college, and I bought the book and I'm reading it. And it came out at the beginning of the year, just around the time of the high holidays, around Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and and it's called Not in God's Name. And I get it, and I'm reading it, and my friend walks up to me and he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "that book was not written for you. That book was written to be, you know, to be dropped by airplanes, parachuted into Lebanon and Iran and Iraq," is what he said to me. And I hate to say it, we need to drop a couple of these copies into a couple of people's houses in the Israeli government, for God's sake. And we need to say that there are, like, right now we're in Lebanon, we're in Iran, we're talking about Turkey, we're talking about what is going on right now. We just finished 2 years with Gaza, with Gaza and with Lebanon and Hezbollah, and I know soldiers and families and people that have been separated from their kids for weeks or months, or and kids that are dead. Jews, I mean, and forget, I mean, the amount of civilians that have just been killed overall, and the amount of trauma that everyone has, that the entire world has. There's no appetite for this. And who are the leaders? Who are the people that where are the people like Rabbi Jonathan Sacks? Where are the people like the Lubavetcher Rebbe, the people around the world? Whether all leaders from around the world would go to him for words of guidance and wisdom and education, and they would start initiatives for education and to help people that were in need and to pick people up in the community, and widows and divorcees and freaking everything. And instead, we're replaced with Barry Weiss and and Rabbi Shmuley going on freaking Pierce Morgan and just making a moron out of himself and out of all Orthodox Jews. It's terrible. I don't even feel bad about yelling about those people, by the way, because I think it's very clear that I'm talking about very specific people. I'm talking about very few specific people. The problem is that right now, I've heard conversations on Julian Dory's podcast, on Tucker Carlson's podcast, on Danny Jones' podcast, on I mean, the amount of on freaking Breaking Points, right? The amount of rhetoric that's going on about the Jewish religion that is being spread by people that have absolutely no business in this world representing the Jewish people and the Jewish faith is astounding. Is absolutely astounding. I cannot believe how many people are going around. I mean, I was listening to this Tucker Carlson with I was listening to Tucker Carlson. Yeah, I know. Tucker Carlson hates Jews. No, he doesn't. He freaking doesn't like the Israeli government for all the wars he's getting us in, that they've gotten us into. And you know what? He doesn't talk about the Jewish religion very much. And if he does, it's going to be fundamentally flawed because he's fighting with morons like Rabbi Shmuley. So he's not getting the right picture, right? So he's having this conversation with this Zhijing Joaquin, this Chinese professor that's been going around. He's all over. He's all over podcasts and social media lately, talking about the rebuilding the third temple. That Israel might, or that someone might, Israel or Iran or anyone might accidentally destroy the Al-Aqsa mosque, and that's going to spur a rebuilding of the third temple. And I am here to say that the people that are trying to rebuild the third temple are not the people that should be rebuilding the third temple. Please go fix your own home before you go and try to fix the rest of the world. Deal with whatever you got going on in your own life. Go pick up a book, pick up sit down, learn with the rabbi for a couple of minutes a day, for God's sake. Get an understanding of what the Jewish perspective and ideology is about before you go ahead and start talking about how you're representing all of us around the world, because you're not. You're not. You're not. You're not. You're not. Yes, we pray every day for a third temple. We pray every day to be redeemed. We don't pray that it comes like this. We don't pray for war. We don't pray. We don't pray to try and sabotage and blackmail and bully and play ridiculous woke social media tactics and then leave an entire power vacuum or education vacuum or information vacuum for a bunch of morons to come in and fill in. There's so many intelligent Orthodox teachers and Orthodox lawyers and doctors and writers and people in Hollywood. And like, there are so many wonderful people that are so afraid to speak because they have this mentality that if you say anything against the government of Israel, that you're betraying the Jewish people. You're not. Why does that apply to why can I criticize Trump and love the country? Why can I criticize Joe Biden and love the country and love the values that America stands for, but I can't criticize Bibi Netanyahu and say, "Hey, if I'm an Orthodox Jew, I want Orthodox Jewish values. This doesn't look like Orthodox Jewish values to me." Why can't I say that? um, we're in a passive society. We're in a super passive society. I was This happened to myself. This happened to myself. I was driving a couple of years ago, um, back from Orlando. I've said this story in the podcast before, but um, I'm driving back home with my family from my wife, and at the time I only had one kid, back from Orlando to South Florida, and we're pulling over for some gas, and we see that, I'm getting gas, and my wife's in the car, my kid's in the car, and I see that pulled over by I guess where the coffee shop and convenience shop is. There's a woman that is fighting or arguing with this guy, with her, I guess, boyfriend or husband or whatever. Kids in the car, and she's yelling let me have him, let me out, let me out. And my heart stops, because I'm afraid of confrontation. I'm afraid of everything. and I and someone's like, "Someone please help." She literally said that. She's like, "Someone please help." Now this is one of these. And if you've ever done the drive from Orlando to South Florida, you basically have one or two highways that you can take, and there's like rest stops every bunch of miles. So they tend to be pretty packed, pretty dense, because there's only a few of them. So if you ever want to stop to go to the bathroom, there's only two or three, or get a coffee or whatever, take a break. There's only charge your Tesla. There's only a couple of spots that you could potentially go to, and so it's pretty packed, and no one moved. No one even looked at her. Like, people were, like, afraid to respond to this woman that was with, like, a child in the back seat and say anything. And I'm not a hero. I'm a wimp. I didn't take any jujitsu classes yet. And I just said, but I'm 6'4", 200 pounds. And I start walking over, just take a couple of steps over. I'm like, "Hey, are you okay? Can I help you with anything?" And someone says, "Yeah, he's not letting me go." And the guy goes, "Okay, you can go, you stupid," whatever, calls her name. Um, and and I'm like, "Do you need help getting your stuff?" She's like, "Yeah." He's like, he's not opening the trunk. He's not letting me get my stuff out. He's not letting me not letting me get my kid out." And um, and I went over and I said, "Here, let me help you take your." He goes, "Fine, you can take your stuff. You can take your shit. Get out of here. I don't want you. I don't want to see you anyway. You psycho." And So I went over and I went to try to help her out, and I don't remember. I was dumb as hell. I shouldn't have done it because I could get, like, shot, and I had my own kid in the car. But I put my hand in his car to help her take her bag out. He's like, "Hey, man, don't touch my car." So and I just walked away. Um, I just walked away, and she was fine, and she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna get a bus." I didn't walk away before. She said, "Okay, I'm fine. I'll just grab a bus from here. The bus comes every X amount of time. I've done this before." I was like, "Okay, that's great." And I walked away. No one did anything. We live in a world that's extremely, extremely passive, and the problem is I think we're missing out on leadership. We're missing out on voices. We're missing out on people speaking out, and we've gotta start doing that. And we have to make it very clear that we're not speaking out against Jews, we're not speaking out against the land of Israel or the people in Israel. We're speaking about the way that we're being represented. I think it's a fair thing to say, considering that we're on the verge of World War III. And I think that there is no game plan with Iran, and the game plan is chaos. It's not good for anyone. Um, it's not good for anyone. And I want to be sober about this. I want to be cool headed about this. I want to look to ancient wisdom words that we say every day, that I say every day in my life. It's truth. And I live my life with God's values. And if I see people that are claiming to live their lives with my values. And one of the best strategies that that Israel has, and it works in beautiful ways sometimes, and it's really harmful some ways, is they claim that they represent all Jews around the world because of the Jewish homeland. But when you do that, I mean, you don't consult with us before you go ahead and blatantly bully American politicians, before you go ahead and blatantly get into more wars than your people even necessarily want. I mean, I don't know. Is it true that allegedly the Ayatollah had a religious doctrine against developing a nuke? I mean, I'll look up the source. I'll post it in the show note captions. And if you want to say you don't believe them, okay, that's fair. I hear you. We have intelligence for a reason. We have we have spies, and we have to protect ourselves, and we have to know what's going on, and information is valuable, absolutely. But you got to give us the reasons to trust you. I think trust is something that's earned, and not something that's given. And Bibi Netanyahu was about to be thrown out of office before October 7th, and since then has become the face of Jews. And is that why? That's so disappointing. That's so disappointing. He's not my face, man. He's not the face of my homeland. He's not the face of my religious homeland. Um and now we're getting lumped in. And I don't want to grow up in an America where I have to hide the fact that my name is Hirschman when I love America. I love this society. I love living here, and I've contributed to this world my whole life. And I teach, and I have the podcast, and I pay taxes, and I own a home in Florida. I've owned two homes in Florida, and I mean, I've driven across the country a bunch of times and gotten to know the people, and I know this. I've been to more than half the states, and I freaking love this place. I want this place to do great. I want everyone to do well. Bibi Netanyahu is not gonna build a third Beis Hamikdash. He's not gonna build a third temple. Millions of people are getting the wrong impressions because of the wrong voices that are speaking up, and the right voices have to start speaking up. It's really, really, really important we start looking inward, and we have to start understanding and start remembering that, you know, God God tells the Jewish people, like, "Hey, you gotta walk in my ways in order if you wanna live in the land, then you gotta walk in my ways, and you gotta do things the way that I tell you." Um, and if you ever wanna get back, we're in exile for a reason. We're in exile for a reason. We have something that we need to resolve amongst ourselves. We have something that we need to resolve amongst ourselves. We have to understand what the philosophy of Edom is, and we have to counter it. And for the record, um, from a religious level, this is not Galot Yishmael. Yishmael is a biblical term for the Muslims and Arabs. There's no exile of the Muslims and Arabs. Jews and Arabs got along for thousands of years. The Rambam, Maimonides had tremendous, tremendous respect, as did great scholars like the Ibn Ezra, um, Sforno. I mean, some of the Middle Eastern Rebbeim, the Middle Eastern Rebbeim that grew up that lived in the Muslim world. They didn't look at they knew the exile that we were in wasn't the exile against. I mean, it's like, I mean, unfortunately, and so the people that are saying that we're going to rebuild a third temple by bombing a bunch of Muslim countries is completely ignoring the fact that we're not in the exile of the Muslims or the Arabs. We don't know who our enemies are right now, but we know it's not them. And are there people that don't like us? Yeah. Um, does that mean okay? I mean, to what extent, to what degree? We have a standing army. think we're a pretty safe country. Israel doesn't, until this war, Israel hasn't gone. I mean, we're getting hit in Jerusalem. We're getting hit in Rehovot. We're getting hit in Beit Shemesh. Like, for what? And by the way, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe and maybe someone does know better than me, and I would love for someone to come on and someone to come on the podcast and talk with me about this, and maybe explain to me that what I'm missing. Um, Maybe I got it all wrong, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I do. Um, this conversation is really hard to have. Um, but I think that if I could just summarize the basic points. Number one, the exile that we're in is not an exile of the Arabs and the Muslims. It's an exile of Edom. Don't take our eye off the ball. Don't focus on the wrong thing. Number two, uh, the people that are running the state of Israel and the current people that are the voices of the Jewish people and even of the Orthodox community uh, are not the people that should be. And the Jewish representation has a responsibility to do a better job with that. The fact that Brett Weinstein is the only one, I mean, Brett Weinstein was on Danny Jones' podcast the other day, and he's a very sober-minded person too. That's not true. He's a little alarmist for me, but he's been right about a lot. So as far as I'm concerned, he has some credentials, and yeah, he's a little, he does look at a lot of things like catastrophe. One thing that he talked about on Danny Jones' podcast was that he's his understanding that the Orthodox community wants this religious battle. It does not. It does not. And him thinking that and saying that the Orthodox is the danger right now is that the Orthodox reputation is getting clipped in the process. The Orthodox reputation is peaceful. The Orthodox population says we need rabbinical permission to go to war. It has to be a war of self-defense. What does that constitute? I don't know. But I certainly know that the people that are making the decisions aren't really asking the scholars. Man, I'm going to try to listen back to this. I hope this is publishable. Good night, everyone.